Okay, so just tracking some things that were going on lately. I'm not going to waste any time and do the whole typical stuff here. So, hey, thanks for jumping on if you're here. Really appreciate it. And the title is not bull crap. I really want to talk about something that just happened the other day. We were talking about relatively good paying jobs, opportunities that exist within the system, and what we're hearing for jobs reports out there. So, I know it's lunchtime for a lot of folks. So, we're going to try to keep this relatively on point today. But what I want to start with before I say anything as you're watching this is we're getting really positive news in and around payroll data, average wages. We're seeing the way jobs are really seeming to come back strong. But the one thing I'm also hearing is people are applying for jobs and not getting them. There's tons of openings, but they're not getting callbacks. So I want to tell you what I did to follow up on some of this information, what I did in and around some of these open jobs, and then what I've sort of have continuously been doing from a standpoint of digging in and getting my own research. So without further ado, I want to give you some quick numbers here of what we saw in the most recent payroll information, as well as the overall jobs market that we're seeing. So here's the headline that I think everyone is reading. Payrolls increased 372,000 in June, which was much more than expected. And here's the problem. The jobs market is like screaming in the face of recession issues. This is an important call out because it's a very weird situation to think that on the one hand, all we hear about is recessions, there's no spending, the economy's faltering, GDP is not going to be good. Um, Dima, what's up, man? A good call out too. Like I think we all want to look for that. Um, let me be clear here. Traditional recessions don't typically happen during times of job increases and wage increases. So again, we're in a weird situation that means all of us as investors need to think about what will a bottom look like? When will a bottom come? How do we take action on it and do something to get the ball back to rolling? So let me give you the data, and then I want to jump into some of the things that I'm doing and what I'm seeing out there. And I think you're going to find this particularly interesting because it's not fluff from an article. It's the real world, what I'm seeing out there. So quick pieces on this. We saw average hourly earnings across the U.S. rise 5.1% from a year over year perspective, which was faster than what was estimated. Education and health services were the leaders as far as job creation is concerned. Next, after that, was more professional and business services. Then came leisure and hospitality. I don't think I'm saying anything here that should be like, wow, what a total surprise. Education and health, of course, we're going to see gains in that all the time. That makes a ton of sense. Professional business services, well, kind of weird if we're looking towards a recession, but yeah, makes sense. And then naturally, as COVID restrictions continue to come down, um, leisure and hospitality, of course, we're going to see more hotels, more travel and transportation. We're going to see more cruises, things like this. So nothing here should stand out as being absolutely mind blowing or amazing. Now, what is interesting about this is we're seeing a general acceleration of a much faster pace than what we would typically see for June. So what this ultimately means for us is the core part of the US economy, jobs, people who are working and paying their bills, is actually doing really well, even though there seems to be other areas that aren't. So, an interesting point nonetheless. The other piece that we pay attention to are non-farm payrolls. This is just another indicator that really goes into sort of the aggregate of how we think about the economy, how we think about fundamental analysis. So, non-farm roll payrolls went up 372,000, as we said at the beginning here, which was way better than what everyone was thinking, which was about 250,000 jobs. And Dow Jones was the one who ultimately estimated that. But again, much, much higher. Seems to be a strong year for job growth overall. Again, kind of weird with recession talks. And this all comes out from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Now, I want to call out a few more key points here before I jump in. Unemployment rate was 3.6%, which is the same as what we saw in May. And it's also where we expected it to be in terms of estimates or whatever else that says. So the good news here is we're not seeing a big problem from the standpoint of people who don't want to go back to work either, which is actually kind of interesting. So we saw a drop to 6.7 from 7.1% of what we call like discouraged workers or part-time jobs. So also kind of a good number there. Actually, really surprising if I'm being honest. Now, the other key point as part of this as well, before I get into what I'm really curious about though, is we did see somewhat of a slowdown or what we would call a deceleration of the downwardly revised May number, right? So it did get revised, but not much of a big deal in my opinion. We did also see average hourly earnings increase 0.3% for the month, which, as I already said, was up 5.1% from a year ago. Now, here's the problem. All of this means basically, um, thank you everybody too. Um, hey Sarah, thank you for that too. I'm gonna call out some of these comments in a second. Here's the problem. Most people don't do the kind of research that I do, and I want to explain what I do, how I do it, and why it's important when we have conversations like this because there aren't a lot of people who really know how to go out and get this information, aggregate the information, and then take action uh, on the information. So I see these numbers, things are great. You go on LinkedIn, there's jobs up the wazoo of every type, from entry level jobs at coffee shops to high end pay at the highest possible realm of what you can make. I did a couple things in the past couple weeks here that I think are going to be interesting for anyone who's watching this. I started applying for jobs across the board. I have a very nice resume. I typically always get a call back. And what I was doing is I was looking for jobs that were both a really good fit as well as not a really good fit, just to see if I was getting calls from recruiters, what the pay looked like, just trying to get some information together as far as what's really happening out there. Now, lo and behold, to my surprise, only about 10% even gave me a call back. And these are for jobs that are being paid advertised jobs that have immediate openings. And this is across the board, industries, sectors, the whole shebang. Um, the other thing I'm seeing is a lot of these postings are very old, but they don't appear to be. So what that means is they're you know job XYZ that's been on for 6 months is getting reissued every 1 month. Is it really a new job, or is it just the same job they're not trying to fill but want to show that they have openings? It's a good reason to check that and follow these things. Now, additionally, um, I had a dinner this week with a friend of mine who owns a pretty sizable dental practice, owns a number of locations, really good guy. And we were talking about the fact that he's entering panic mode because he absolutely cannot find people to work. And I said, well, look, man, maybe you're not paying enough. I mean, that's my first thought always is, are we paying people fairly? Is it a living wage? Is it something where they have benefits, etc.? And I was totally blown away. And this is where the title of this live stream came from. She said the starting pay for a hygienist in a dental practice is $45 an hour. Now I understand different parts of the country, maybe this is differentiated, but up here in the New England area, that's still good money. So 45 an hour plus benefits. And I said, okay, well, what does that require educationally? And he said, well, right off the bat, it's a 2-year program that people go to. Um, and I said, so wait a minute, let me get this straight. A 2-year program, not unbelievably difficult. Like, right, you could definitely go and get through this and get your hygienist certification, education license, whatever it might be. And you're starting at 45 an hour, full-time hours, full benefits, and he pays bonuses. And I was just thinking, like, holy moly, we can't even. Oh, that's interesting, Dima, that you went to a dentist. That's really interesting. So this is a great conversation then. So the interesting thing here was I said, okay, so you can't find anybody to take 45 an hour, which again, right, assuming 40 hours a week, right? That's a nice, good job in the US. It's a great job, especially if it's a dual income and benefits included. So that's a huge positive. Um, I'm going to talk about the tech sector in a second, Stephen. So I'm going to get to that in a few minutes. Um, and then also the manufacturing warehousing, because I in my daily job I cover both areas pretty well. I was just talking to a big manufacturer this morning, actually, with a funny story on that. So the other piece of this too is I said, okay, well, forget about like the highly skilled hygienist who gets 45 an hour plus bennies and also needs 2 years of training, which by the way, I preach all the time on Twitter. If you follow me, don't go to school to get an education, go to get a skill. And the reason you want to get a skill is because there's almost always some known income tied to that skill set that you can carry over into a job, usually very quickly, medical, education, etc. So I said, okay, what else are you seeing? And he said, well, for dental assistants, which I wasn't exactly sure what this meant. So I asked the question and he explained to me, essentially that's the person who's in with the dentist, sort of handing them the tools, maybe puts the tools away after, cleans them, the whole shebang. That's 25 an hour, trained on the job. 0 people have applied and can't get people in to take the job. And I was totally blown away. We're sitting there. There's a bunch of us talking about this. There's a group that, all entrepreneurs, investors, and such, we all talk. And I was like, I'm blown away because all I hear all day long is there's no money, there's no jobs, they don't pay enough. I can't get any help. And I'm thinking, like, this is in the face of everything I know. So we've got 45 an hour with 2 years of school. We've got 25 an hour with none. And then down the street from me is Dunkin' Donuts paying 16 an hour plus tips. And this was the conversation that kind of led into it was, well, I guess the problem is the general attitude that we're seeing is a lot of folks, especially the younger generation, but not picking on them, is there's sort of this, it's not what I want to do. And that those are the words of an economy that is in big trouble if we don't get it fixed and get people back on track to doing the right things. The issue with the I don't want to do it, or it's not what I like, or I'm not passionate about it, I totally hear you. The problem is when you get to be 30, 35, 40 plus, that 45 an hour has grown to 60 an hour, years of bonuses and benefits paid, and suddenly you're living in a beautiful home, you can support your family, you're taking your vacations. The earlier we can get people into good paying long-term jobs, the better ultimately it is for everybody, including the economy. Now, I want to switch gears here for a second, and I'm going to talk to, as a few people have mentioned in the comments here, um, the tech sector, which is insane. I'm going to give you some real numbers that I'm personally seeing. And then I want to talk also about manufacturing. But I also want to talk about another concern I have. Um, I am not anti-union at all. I think unions have a great place globally. I think there's a lot of roles they play and they do a lot of good for their people. But I also think there's a lot of situations where you don't need a union. So it's there's a positive and a negative to every situation, union, non-union, where we need them, where we don't. And I couldn't help but think about this example of my buddy who can't hire someone for 45 an hour. But Starbucks is forming a union, has already started. Apple stores, retail is forming a union and has already started to approve it. Amazon warehouses are trying to form a union. The warehouse one makes sense to me, by the way, just for the record. But I'm thinking about like working in a coffee shop, paying the dues. And, when I think about a union in its traditional sense, um, my father-in-law was a union truck driver. My father also a union guy. So there is a definite place for it. It makes a ton of sense to not be abused, reasonable hours, getting good vacation, mass agreements on pay for labor jobs. I think there's a ton of sense in it. But when I think about like a union to Starbucks, it scares me a little bit because I think like, well, that sort of should be like a starting point or a kickoff point. This is where you should maybe go because you're going and getting that education to get the skills to get the better job. I'm not pooping on anybody who has a good job at anywhere, even if it's low pay, high pay, doesn't matter. I want you to be happy. But when I'm hearing things like retail stores and like a barista at a coffee shop, I get nervous because where's the growth? Where, like you can't on one hand scream, I can never afford a house because they're so expensive, and then spend a career that has low paid earnings. It's just, I'm sorry, it doesn't work. Okay. That's the truth. So let's differentiate this conversation now per I think what's in the comments here. In the high tech sector, I'm going to give you real numbers that I'm actually seeing. I've done a ton of hiring in the high tech space myself over the years as well. I work in high tech and also the manufacturing space. So what I'm seeing from the manufacturing space, because I think it's good to start there, is we are seeing leaps and bounds in technology, robotics, process-based automation, and analytics. The good news is it's not cutting into hiring or employee pay. It's actually making the job safer and more efficient, so employees are able to do the things that are better, both for the company and for themselves as well, might I add. So it's taking a lot of the strain and the bullcrap off the table. Let's be clear, not everything, right? No matter what, it's never going to be that way. But largely speaking, across the US and Canada, I cover both countries. In the manufacturing space, we're seeing that wages are not anywhere near high tech, but they're getting more consistent and they are raising up over time. But I also think what I'm seeing in the manufacturing space is there is a demand for higher skill. And this goes back to the conversation again. Make sure you have the skills to back up the ask for pay. This is a common theme I'm going to always regurgitate and say over and over again. So that's that piece of it. Now, on the total flip side, on the high tech space, we're talking whether you're an account manager in customer success, you could be an engineer or programmer, you could be in the leadership side of it. What we're seeing is a general lack of deep talent, a general lack of experience. Now, like any job, you can learn on the job, but the problem is a lot of these companies are fighting over a very, very small pool of individuals in the first place. You can hire a bunch of newer folks with less experience, and that's totally great. In fact, it's good that you do that, but you still need senior people to teach the ways to do things, to help them improve in real time. All the education in the world is going to teach you real on the skills stress training when you have budgets to be concerned with and timelines, right? It's not the same as submitting a report at the end of a semester in college. So what we're seeing is on the engineering, excuse me, on the engineering, the developer side of the house, we're starting to see insane numbers. I personally have multiple friends who are in the engineering space, in the data science space. They're getting offers now. These are senior folks. So I want to call that out. They're getting offers of 5, 6, 800K a year salaries. Well, let me be okay. 5, 600K salaries, 800K total packages. This includes restricted stock. This includes full benefits. This includes lots of other perks and things like that. So if you hear those numbers and you think like, what? Oh my God, like 800K, that's insane. You have to keep in mind there are so few people who have the deep, deep tech stack experience, plus the AI, plus the machine learning, plus the ability to push this out into production, oversee it, and run it. So in a lot of ways, when I think about the big tech space, I compare it to professional sports. It's not the salary that you have to look at. It's the amount of years and time that they've been in the space, the 12 and 14-hour shifts they put into the job. So you can sort of justify that top pay of saying, these are the utmost professionals of what they do. They are the pros, the MVPs of the space they're in. But to be clear, though, there's also lots of people who are making unbelievable money in the tech space as well. And there's a huge, huge demand for it, both on the standpoint of just being experts within AWS or Azure, or being able to be great with Salesforce, or being able to be great with Microsoft, or having certifications of specializations. I'm telling you right now, if you're watching this, there are massive, massive jobs. They're paying huge money in the tech space for people with relatively junior certifications because the demand is so high for them. System admins, data admins, we need these people badly, and the pay is really good. Dima, I'm going to share this, and then I'll talk about it in just a second. So what we're seeing is we're hearing about a lot of freezes in the tech sector, but what I want to call out, though, is a freeze is not always what it seems. There might be a freeze in hiring, but this could be, on the executive level. This could be like on the business development side of the house. If you are an account manager or really good at doing sales, those are jobs that are in demand no matter what. They don't go away. Okay. Now, granted, the bottom 10% might get shaved off, but those are huge jobs that pay a lot of money. So if you're really looking to like scale up your life, really scale up your life, you got to start thinking about where the money is and how you backtrack into that. The same way someone who wants to get picked in the first round draft in the NFL, same process, right? It's the years and years of training, the gym time, the diet, the nutrition. You can do this in your life too. Go and look at a specific sector and the requirements to get your foot in the door. Once you have your foot in the door, then the requirements are to start jump scaling into your pay that you're looking for. Now, Dimas made a comment here. He's in ops, process improvement, project management, and commercial banking. I completely know what that job is. Definitely looking for career change. What are the thoughts on staying in the space or moving to sales or elsewhere? So I want to call it out. Like, there are so many openings for entry-level business development and account executives within the tech sector. The key is, do you want the stress of having a quarterly number that if you miss it, you're fired? It's not just about the money. It's about how long you're going to maintain the pay. This actually harkens back to the conversation about the union situation. I have friends who are union carpenters, real smart dudes, and their hourly pay is great when they're working. And the problem is they're not working year round because not everyone's always looking for union carpenters, etc. I know this is a one-off example, but this is the same thing with sales. Is you really need to be that top 50% performer consistently, able to handle and manage the stress and be an expert in what you're talking about and continuously keep learning. So my short answer is, if you feel like your background in ops and process improvement is a great fit for that, then you're probably going to be a great fit for that role. What I would actually suggest if I was you is less looking at, actually, I'll give you real numbers. I just talked to my friend who's a VP of customer success in another company. We were just having a conversation the other day that they're looking for customer success reps. A customer success rep is the person who helps customers when they buy technological solutions, especially really complex ones, to make sure that if they're having problems, it's not working right, they act as a first line of defense to maintain the relationship, act as a liaison to find out what's happening and how they get people in to help and solve the problem. Those jobs start. I don't know what process improvement PM pays at an ops center for a bank, but these jobs will start entry level with a college education of 80, 90K. very experienced customer success or customer service managers are making in the neighborhood of 150, and you'll usually see a bonus on top of that as well. So I think this is a world a lot of people don't know exists, and it's out there, and it's desperately looking to hire. Customer success is so in demand right now. It's flabbergasted. They're paying huge hiring bonuses just for referring people. That's how bad they want help there. I want to also, Dima, always good questions, so I appreciate it. As this conversation goes, I want to tie this back to something else for a second before I talk about certs, because this is a wildly huge question to answer. I like to constantly think about your pay has to match your skill set and the differentiation of your skill set. So if I want to make $5 million a year, it's simple. It's actually really easy. I need to run a 4.440. I need to be about 6'5", catch an 80-mile-per-hour football, and be able to evade defenders. And I'll make $5 million a year, right? If I'm the top of what I do within that category, right? I'm an NFL player. If I want to make $200 an hour, I want to be a highly trained consultative account executive who can walk into a CEO's office, close a deal in 6 months for, 20, 30, $40 million, crush my numbers consistently, and then come right back and do it in the next 6 months. Right? If I want to make $45 an hour, I take a 2-year training program, move into dental hygienist job. There's my $45 an hour, right? So the scale of what we want is really just backtracking to what the skill set is to build up into that role. But where I think the problem is for most people is they don't know these jobs exist. Like, as I was saying earlier, I had no idea that a hygienist made $45 an hour to start up in this area. That's really, really good money. That's really good money. So like, you might want to retire early, and you might want to eventually make $100 an hour or have a salary of 120 or 250, whatever the number is. But it does start with something, so the more things we can do that tie skills to pay and pay to jobs, the better we're all going to be. Now, this is a great call out here. And this is the right question to ask, by the way. So I appreciate you asking it. There are so many different types of technology that are out there, from very general to very specific. Excuse me. So the challenge becomes, where do you start to learn? And then where do you start to add the certifications on top of that? Because I'll tell you right now, the underlying degree in education is not that important if you can fill in for immediate roles. What I also want to call out, much like the conversation of 20 versus 40 versus 100 versus 5 million a year, the key here is understanding where the demand is. And this is going to be a question of how fast you're going to get that job versus the competition, and how much is there. And from a higher level, how much depth of knowledge and hands-on do you need to get the higher paying roles? But I think if I was to start brand new today, no experience in tech, don't have an understanding of data, architecture, IT in general, I think for me, what I'm going to really look to do is start to get my head in and around cloud computing, where and how data comes from and works. This could mean that you're getting certified. You get some Google certs or AWS certs or Azure certs to get some cloud information. Then you might want to take a look at things from like an IBM. IBM has tons of certifications online that are either free or low cost. And I would start to add on things like, basic machine learning or AI, not because you're going to use these to get a job just yet, but because you have to have a foundational layer of understanding the key components to build upon. The mistake that I see most often is folks want to jump right into a high paying job, but they haven't yet built a basement. And then the very first strong breeze that comes by blows their huge house over. Start with a small house on an incredibly powerful foundation, because that foundation will allow you to build for the next 20 years of your career straight up into the stratosphere. So when I think about certifications, I think about what is the future of the tech space. And by the way, this whole call isn't about tech and getting a job in tech, but it's a great question, and it really applies, I think, to what a lot of people are trying to get into here. I think that we're in an environment where every major company in the world, big and small, knows that they need to have the ability to look at and understand their data. They need to have a place to store it. They need to have a way to secure it with cybersecurity. They then also need to have a way to analyze it and perform analytics on it, and then also get that out to their teams. What's interesting about this, though, is there's multiple layers in there. There's system administrators, there's solution administrators, and then there's specific experts in specific products. So I'm only calling all this out because I don't think you have to think about this in terms of like, well, I have to compete with someone who makes $800K a year because for 40 years they've been doing full stack dev with AI. That's great. Let them do that. Go and get yourself a job that pays $200K in the next 5 years. by starting and stacking skills. So I'm going to reiterate this so that it's like really TLDR here. I would start with getting a basic understanding of cloud computing and what that means, get a basic understanding of data architecture, and then get a basic understanding of business intelligence and or analytics. They're sometimes the same, sometimes very different. Those three things will give you at least a foundational layer of understanding how data works, where it goes, and how we look at it and understand it. That's enough to at least start to build an idea of where you like things, where you're comfortable, and what you can understand within it. Then you can start to think about, okay, well, maybe I want to go and get that customer success job for a 100K salary at any of these huge companies that are hiring for those roles. And I'm telling you, they're always hiring for these roles. And it also gives you a foot in the door for sales because you can at least talk intelligently about it. Or even, I don't know how old anyone is that watches this, but if I'm under 25, I'm really thinking maybe, and I have no experience in tech, you know what I'm going to go? I'm going to go and get a job as an SDR or a BDR. A BDR is a business development rep. Typically, business development reps will have a patch, and their job is to go out and help find new opportunities, find new customers who are interested in the products and solutions, etc. Dima, I'm 39, so we're aligned there. Now, an SDR is a sales development rep. It sounds like it's the same, but in a lot of companies, it's actually not. So the difference is, and sometimes the names will be different, but I want to create a point of demarcation if you're watching this and you're new and you want to jump in. On the one hand, a BDR is really cold calling, grinding, sending emails, working hard. But I'll tell you what, the skills you gain from that are going to pay dividends the rest of your life. The other side of it is the SDR is more like they handle inbound leads, following up with customers, trying to set up meetings. Also, a core pillar of being successful in the sales world is knowing how to do lead conversions. And then additionally, sales conversions, and then getting the process of the ball moving within this. So I just want to call that out, that whether you want to be on the tech side, customer success side, or sales side, either way, it starts with fundamentally understanding all this kind of stuff. And the other piece I'm going to throw out here, because I don't want to just harp on this one topic, come with a point of view. The reason why you want to go and understand like cloud computing or data architecture or business analytics, the reason is when you go and you get that first interview or that first try to meet someone to get into the space, you want to come with a point of view that's going to sound something like, you know, I understand that this is the way industry has been moving, but here's really what I think. I think there's a missed opportunity because although we're seeing the expansion of cloud computing, if we were to apply an underlying layer of machine learning at the data flow level, this would develop insights that are then embedded into the contextual process. You say something like that to a manager when you're going for an entry-level job, their head's probably going to explode, and they're going to call me and say, we got a guy we don't want to put on your team. And like, these are the basics of just having the ability to put together some basic things into a really easy point of view of what you believe is happening in the industry that can be slightly unique or a little bit differentiated, and why you're the right person to help deliver that. Now, again, I don't expect everyone to know what I just said and what it means, but I'm telling you, it's that easy. So Nekra, always a pleasure. So my point here was on the $45 an hour, if you're just joining, I was at a dinner the other night with a bunch of buddies who were all sort of, entrepreneurs, big investors, real estate folks. And we were talking about the fact that a friend of ours who owns several dental practices is entering panic mode because he quite literally cannot fill his dental hygienist jobs that start at $45 an hour with full benefits because no one wants to do the job. So the joke of the title was apparently $45 an hour just isn't good enough. So that's really what was driving the conversation. I appreciate asking because I probably should have mentioned that too. Joseph, actually, this is a really great call out too. Sorry, I'm jumping all over the place here a little bit. I have never worked at GE. I have a lot of friends who work at GE. I'm familiar with some of GE's specific, what they call, oh my gosh, I'm gonna forget the name, manufacturing-based software that they use. One of the big shifts that we see with companies like GE as well, and this is a good place to look for jobs where they're still trying to hire, is they specialized in manufacturing for so long, it only made sense they should develop their own software. Another call out here for a lot of people who may not realize this is when you hear John Deere, most people out there are thinking, yeah, I know John Deere. They make tractors and mowers and, farmers love John Deere. I hear John Deere and I'm like, oh yeah, you mean that massive data and analytics company that specializes in software? Because that's the real business. Everyone out there is realizing that where you specialize in often has insights that other people in the industry could use. By developing software for your own machines, you can oftentimes license this out or sell it to other people as well. And this is where you, someone who's interested in making more money or building a new career, who might have a specialization in something that you do, it's really easy to carry over. Um, Dima, good call out there. I want to also mention too, though, just as a real example, uh, Dima was saying earlier that like working in their space, they're thinking about a change, possibly looking for a different kind of job. I'll tell you what's really hot right now. If you're a project manager and you understand commercial side of commercial banking, the ops side of it, do you understand the jobs right now in fintech and how they can't find people who have both a traditional banking experience and the ability to look forward into technology? Huge demand and big pay, by the way, might I add. So I see jobs like that come across all the time. So, anyways, I went a little bit longer than I meant to. I hope this was valuable for those that watch. I don't always talk a lot about what I'm seeing in the job space or what I'm seeing for opportunities, but I want to tie this back full circle for a second. All of these things that we're talking about, as far as the opportunities for work, how to make more money, how it affects the economy, what the numbers from the jobs report mean, why we track and look at all these things, and also how it seems to throw itself in the face of a recession. The reason we need to know all of this is because this is all fundamental research, not just to getting jobs and paying your bills, but to being a good investor. If anyone just jumped on or wasn't paying attention, like I literally went out and started applying for tons of different openings. I have no interest in having any of them, but my goal was just to see who got back to me. And I'll tell you what, very few, if any. And it speaks to the fact that there's apparently lots of openings and there's apparently a lot of jobs, but a lot of them don't seem to actually be interested in hiring. But where we are interested in hiring are places where you're going to have to put in some serious work to have a strong understanding of what you're talking about. And you're going to be able to, you're going to get trained on the job. You're going to learn how to do these things. But it's a process. The same way you research a company, it's the same way I research a job. And the goal is you want to always be having that point of view that's unique, whether it's getting an interview or getting into a new investment. Your point of view is for sure the way that you gain access or advantage over your peers, investing, jobs, life, whatever it is. So I just want to call that out, that I think these are always two parallel paths that don't always cross over, but they're right next to each other and can fulfill you the same way. So with that, I really appreciate everyone stopping by. Awesome comments. Joseph, really appreciate you saying that as well. Just saw your comment there. And I'm telling you, the biggest reason why people aren't getting these jobs is because no one outside of the industry is letting anyone know how to get them or what to do to get them. And I am telling you, if you go on LinkedIn, you go on Indeed, I don't know, whatever the source of job you're looking for, start to look for high-tech customer success, customer service, account executive. And I'm telling you, there are a lot of jobs and a lot of need. And one of the things you should do, if you're even thinking like, hey, I want something new, I want a higher paying job, I want a different type of job, whatever the answer is for you, what you really need to do, simply put, is set up a time with a recruiter. And they'll absolutely talk to you, by the way. Set up time with a recruiter and say, hey, look, I really want to break into this industry. I work hard as heck and I'm willing to do it. What would you need to see from me? What needs to be on my resume? And by the way, I want to call this out too. You most likely have skills that are so in demand, but you probably don't even know it, because when you're in that silo of the life you live in the job you're in, and you think like, I turn a wrench all day, so who the hell is going to pay me? I'm a mechanic. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, a ton of people want to pay you, because you know how to talk to people who own shops. You know how to talk to people who buy the products. You know the real conversation as it applies to that particular business. Cars, parts, software in cars, GPS. You know how to get from one point to another. You know how to connect electronic devices to other devices. When you actually think about what you do in a day-to-day, you do so much in your job. I'm telling you, you do so much in your job and you're so valuable. It's just a question of how do you extract your value, put it on a piece of paper that says resume on the top of it, right? Like, you're not a mechanic. You specialize in the technology based on automobile devices and how you repair them and get them back on the road safely while generating a high degree of margin for the shop that you work in. That's a resume, not I'm a mechanic. And by the way, mechanics are awesome. I was a mechanic when I was younger. And I just a couple good comments before I jump off. So Edmund, yeah, it's interesting. A lot of these people don't get back to you. And I think it's not a question of being selective. I actually think that they're just putting it out there to look like they're hiring. And this is like a controversial statement I'm going to make. It's on a recorded line, but I don't care. I think a lot of jobs have already decided who they're going to hire long before they post the opening, but legally they don't want to have the appearance of not opening it up to everybody. So keep that in mind, that it isn't always that you're the wrong candidate. It's that the candidate might have already been chosen and they have to still put out a job requirement publicly before making that hire. Keep that in mind. That's a real thing that happens a lot. Necra, check out Y Combinator. They have a founder matching system. I'm actually in it, funny enough. But Y Combinator, they have a founder matching system where you can get connected with people on the tech side or the sales side to help you build out new products. And then Joseph, I would also call this out too. Like, we are in a golden age where people and businesses are realizing you either start to pay better or you're going to have no employees. Take it or leave it. That's the reality of what it is. Wow, really good comments on here. I really appreciate it. Yeah, and I'm going to jump after responding to this, but Joseph, I wanted to call out this comment because this is really good. My brother is 12 years older than me, and when I was younger, I think high school, college age, before I founded my first company, I was working like 80 hours a week at 2 jobs, and I remember thinking like, man, life is good. Like I've got money, right? I'm a kid working tons of hours with a little bit of cash in my pocket. I think I'm the man. And I think the problem with having multiple gigs is you're not 100% at anything you're doing. To match up the money to what you do, you need to completely tighten your skill set down into one thing that you're better at than anybody. Like for me personally, I will take on anyone at any company at any level on my skill set to develop a machine learning based deep learning environment for an executive to thrive in intelligent forecasting or sales approach around propensity to buy. There is no one anywhere I go that I think is going to be better than me at that. No, that's confidence, maybe a little ego. That's okay. My 20 years of doing this, that's what I'm good at, and that's what I wanted to be good at, and that's a space I want to be in. So for me, it's perfect and it works good. If I tried to do that plus something else, I'm never really that good at any of them. So I have mediocre pay at all of them. Now I'm trading my hours and stress for what could just be one job and then plenty of time on the weekends to see my family. So I still love that comment. That's a great point, though. Thanks so much for watching. I'm going to jump off. It sounds like people appreciate this. If it is appreciated, I can keep doing these in and around jobs, the point of view, thinking about resumes. If it's helpful, I'd love to do it. So with that, I appreciate everyone jumping on. Otherwise, have a great day. And we'll talk soon. Thanks, everybody.